If you guys enjoy what I do, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps the channel and it's free and easy to do. Before we get started with today's video, I have an announcement to make. After years of telling other people's stories, I finally released one of my own. My novel Eternal Reign is available now in both ebook and paperback format for those of you who are like me and prefer to collect physical media. You can grab a copy right now on Amazon through the link in the description of this video. And now back to our regularly scheduled program. In Ishgard, a young man left a message saying that he wanted you to meet him at the Rising Stones, and even though the guard that he left the message with said that the boy made him feel a little uncomfortable just by being there, you go to see what he wants. The boy is named Unukalhai, and he says he works for a friend of yours. He wanted to warn you about the growing threat from beings called icons. They're similar to primals, and the Garleans use the names interchangeably sometimes, but the term was used long before Garlemald even existed. It was what the ancient Allegan Empire called beings like Odin, and Unukalhai was about to get into a deeper explanation, but Urianger shows up and decides to take over. In the time of the Allegans, some of the icons were summoned and put up a major fight against the growing empire, but the Allegans came up with a way to not only capture them, but to harness their powers. They perfected their techniques at the Aetherochemical Research Facility in Auspices, and they sealed 3 particular icons away out there, icons called the Warring Triad. It was the power of the Triad that Thornton originally wanted, but you dealt with him before he could get it. Unfortunately, your battle damaged the restraints that held the Triad, and soon they'll fail altogether, unleashing 3 very powerful icons on the world. They'd likely be upset after being imprisoned for thousands of years, so it would be wise to deal with them before they get out. But there's another problem you'll need to deal with first. Ravana and Bismarck have both been summoned again, and this time they're even stronger than they had been before. If Unukalhai is to be believed, the 2 primals plan on going to try and absorb the powers of the Warring Triad, which would wake the things up and let them rain wholesale death down on everybody. Urianger decides to head back to the Waking Sands to prepare to deal with the Triad, while you work with Unukalhai on the 2 primals. He's pretty positive that the boy's not an enemy, at least not for now. The last time you went up against Bismarck, there was a big plan involving Sid dragging floating islands around and such, along with getting help from the Vanu. Unukalhai gives you a gemstone called the Weeping Eye of Unukalhai that he says will guarantee their support, and he's already told Sid, so the Garlean is already heading out there to get prepped. When it comes to Ravana, the primal is in the process of bolstering his strength off of the prayers of his children, and unlike last time, they won't let you surrender to him and get brought to his lair. You'll need a different way to get to the primal, so Unukalhai thinks that you should talk to the Voss storyteller and see if he has any ideas. He gives you something called the Burning Eye of Ravana that he says you'll know what to do with when the time comes, and you head off without bothering to ask why the kid knows so much and why does he have so many rare gemstones. The Voth is happy that you came because Ravana's followers are hunting hard for more and more Voth to temper to fuel Ravana's power, and they need you to stop him again. There's another path into the hive through a hidden aetherite crystal, but it's warded so only the worthy can enter. Ironically, the Burning Eye of Ravana that Unukalhai gave to you allows you to breach the warding and face the 4-sword wielding insect primal in his much stronger form. Stronger he may be, but he's no match for you, so you bring him down and make your way back to the Voth, who are happy that you dealt with the primal, but the storyteller does want to know how you managed to breach the seal on the aetherite. When you tell him about the Eye of Ravana, he remembers a story from long ago of how an invading tribe had torn Ravana's eye out. The Noth had been looking for it for centuries so they could give it back to Ravana, but the legends say only extremely strong warriors can wield it, which begs the question of how did Unukalhai get it? That's something that can be worried about later. For now you still have to deal with Bismarck, so you head to the Sea of Clouds and show Sonu Vanu the other stone that Unukalhai gave to you. The Vanu is shocked to see that stone in the hands of one of your kind, but that stone will cut through the wind barrier that Bismarck has shielding him if you use it on the aetherite. Sid doesn't understand how that works, but he doesn't understand half of what you do, so he just goes along with it, which leads to you facing Bismarck again on a floating island being dragged through the sky by a ship. And just like before, you bring it down. Seeing that you were once again victorious against the primal, Sonu Vanu believes that you're the savior that one of their ancient warriors had predicted would come and save them years and years ago. That could be true, or it could just be a coincidence. Either way, the 2 primals are dealt with, so you head back to Unukalhai to let him know. The boy had sensed the change in the ether, so he knew that you had succeeded, which is good because he had sensed that Bismarck and Ravana had planned on heading to Auspices once they had the strength, and now they can't. He has a gift that lets him know the minds of primals. He's not the first person you've met who has a weird ability, so it's not something that you spend a lot of time worrying about, because with the primals dealt with, it's time to do something about the Triad. With their prison cracked, they're starting to wake up, but it's not that easy to just walk into the containment facility. At first, Unukalhai hadn't found anyone who knew how, but the Scions of the Seventh Dawn had someone who could do it. So with you there to destroy the icons, Unukalhai has everything he needs to deal with the Warring Triad. There's still one thing that could cause a problem. The Empire probably wants the technology that can control primals, and they'll probably send a group to get it. Them messing around in the area could wake the icons faster. Unukalhai's master wants the Warring Triad dealt with before the Empire can cause those types of problems. The icon Sephirot is almost awake, so you'll have to deal with that one first, so you and Unukalhai head to the flagship out in Azizla to meet up with the other Scions that he's recruited. Along with Urianger, the rest of your crew for this not-so-little mission includes Y'shtola and Krau. After the introductions, where Unukalhai makes the mistake of calling Krau diminutive, because we all know that's the proper way to greet a Lalafell, Unukalhai gets back to explaining the mission and what you're about to face. Sephirot was the god of a race of tree people who lived out in Mericidia. He fought the Allagans for them, and was eventually captured. The machines that the Allagans use to keep him in a dreamlike state while they drain his ether are the same restraints that keeps him from fading away into the ether like primals usually do when they're beaten. They consistently heal him from every injury that he takes, and they'll do that over and over until they run out of power. But since he's the source of power for the prison, it would likely last forever had it not been for your fight with Thornton. Since the prison heals him, you won't be able to destroy Sephirot while he's hooked up to the machines, which means he will have to be released before you can kill him. That also means that if he kills you, he'll be free to wreak havoc on the world. Which means your group will have to split up. One team will turn Sephirot's restraints off, and the other will be there to fight him as soon as he wakes up. It's pretty obvious what your job will be since you're one of the few people who have protection from primal tempering. Krau will join you since she has the same protection, but you'll be doing the fighting, she'll just turn off the restraints. Unukalhai will be joining you too since he's apparently immune to tempering as well, which would leave Urianger and Y'shtola with nothing to do if the Garleans hadn't shown up. The security systems around the area started fighting them, but the two Scions head out to make sure they don't interrupt your work. And you'll need a lot of time because Sephirot at full power was both large enough and strong enough to cause the Allagan army some serious problems, which means fighting it won't be fun if you give it time to get its bearings. So the moment Krau turns off the restraints, you attack the massive icon. As big as it is, the thing grows even larger as the fight goes on, but giant or not, it still falls to the plot armor protected hero. Even though Krau's seen you in action before, watching you fight something as big as Sephirot had her on the edge of her seat the entire time, and the mysterious Unukalhai starts mumbling about what he could have done if he had your strength. Krau has that look on her face that she gets when she's about to start pulling information out of you, but she remembers what Urianger and Y'shtola are doing, so she gives her a call. She lets her know that Sephirot's been dealt with, and her distraction worked because the Imperials never made it into the containment facility. She wants you all to meet back up at the Rising Stones to plan for your next move. Since there's no chance of Sephirot being summoned again, leaving for a while shouldn't be all that dangerous. You all start to head back, but Unukalhai sees Regula Van Hydrus, the legatus of the 6th Legion, watching him, which impresses the Garlean. He's a bit upset that he got tricked into chasing Y'shtola and Urianger around when what he was after was so close, but he decides to withdraw for now so his forces can regroup. Unukalhai tries to goad the man into a fight by saying that the Garleans trying to enslave primals without understanding them makes them even more dangerous and less intelligent than the beast tribes that summoned the things in the first place. But Regula isn't interested in fighting a child, so he leaves. By then, Krau and the Warrior of Light come back after noticing that Unukalhai hadn't followed them. For some reason, he doesn't tell them about the short confrontation with the Garlean, which added to the mask that he's wearing makes Krau question the boy about his secrets and his motives. He's a mysterious kid, but she doesn't think he'll do anything that forces you to put a sword through him, at least not yet. Back at the Rising Stones, while there is cause to celebrate your victory, Urianger points out that the two remaining members of the Triad are at least as strong as Sephirot. They could be even stronger, so you need to get ready for some more intense fights. Unukalhai's not sure you'll get that much time to prepare, because the Garleans really want that technology to control primals, and they don't realize the level of danger they'll put the world in if they accidentally free the two remaining Triad members in their hunt. He mentions his master again, but he won't go into any details about him, which is annoying because it makes it hard to trust him, even if your goals are currently the same. You can't really call yourself allies if you don't really know anything about one another. That entire concept seems foreign to Unukalhai, but it's something that you'll have to worry about later because the Garleans have broken through the barrier that Urianger put around the flagship, so you all race off to stop them before they cause more problems than they realize. Chasing after the Garleans, the Warrior of Light, Unukalhai, and the others head back to Azizla as fast as they can. The Etherochemical Research Facility holds a lot of very dangerous Allagan technology, so Urianger had put a barrier around the place, one that shouldn't have been easy to breach, especially for Garleans who have no magical abilities. It should have been all but impossible for the 6th Legion to break through it, but figuring out how they did it will have to wait for another day. According to Unukalhai, there's a formula hidden inside of the facility called the Genesis expression that apparently can create something out of nothing. Y'shtola's never heard of it, but apparently Unukalhai's mysterious master knows about it, and somehow the 6th Legion does too. That's bad, but Unukalhai thinks this makes for a good opportunity. Since you know the exact spot that Regula is heading to, you all can ambush him and take out the leader of an entire legion. He seems more focused on that than keeping the Genesis expression safe. Kral and Y'shtola think that's the more important thing to focus on, and Urianger is fine with whatever they want to do because he's still trying to figure out how the Garleans got through his barrier. The barrier was a concoction of the students of Baldesion, and it would have taken the most skilled of mages days to break through. Getting through it in a few hours like that would have taken a supernatural ability on par with the Echo. Either way, you can't stand around worrying about it, so you all head into the facility. Regula didn't come alone, and as you chase him, Kral is injured by some Garlean tech, and Unukalhai stays behind to keep her safe. Eventually, Urianger and Y'shtola have to break off from you to hold off the enemy, while you go on to have a rematch with Regula Van Hydrus. The Legatus is strong, but you beat him because he's not main character strong. He decides it'll be a good idea to leave once Y'shtola shows up, but Kral and Unukalhai block his path. Injured or not, he could kill Kral, but with him surrounded, he'd definitely die too. The man can't understand why you all fight against the Emperor when having a means to control icons would make the world a better place, but even if by some chance the Emperor was a noble man, someone having that kind of power would eventually corrupt either him or one of his followers who sought to rule. One man shouldn't control the fate of the entire world, especially not a man that Unukalhai calls a warmongering savage, which nearly makes Regula decide to kill the boy regardless of what happens to him. But dying there wouldn't serve the Empire, so he uses a flash grenade and escapes. While Kral is happy that she's not dead, she's still pretty badly hurt from earlier, and if it hadn't been for Unukalhai fighting to protect her, she'd be very, very dead. Getting praise from the Scions makes the boy a bit uncomfortable. Apparently he's not used to people saying nice things about him, which is kinda sad for someone so young. Everyone should hear some kind words about themselves every once in a while. Even though Regula fled, he'll definitely be back since the thing he wants is so close, so Y'shtola, Kral, and Urianger get to work putting a stronger barrier around the device, while you and Unukalhai head back outside, after Kral makes the boy even more uncomfortable by thanking him again. Urianger follows you because he wants to ask Unukalhai a question without Kral and Y'shtola around, namely why the boy took down his barrier and invited the 6th Legion in to try and get the Scions to kill Regula Van Hydrus. The plan was clearly something that the boy's master came up with, but he carried it out for the sole purpose of killing the man. Unukalhai tries to deny it, but the fact that he and Regula both knew about the Genesis expression, something that Kral had never even heard of before, was very suspicious, and there was no way that Regula could have disabled Urianger's barrier, which means it had to be Unukalhai. The boy still doesn't outright admit it. Talking to him is like talking to a lawyer, but he does say, if I had hypothetically done what you said, what would you do about it? Urianger doesn't have an issue with his goal, it's the trying to manipulate them part that he has a problem with. It's not like you're all friends with Garlemald. If he had told you the plan, it probably would have gone off more smoothly without Kral getting hurt in the process. Unukalhai was using the most dangerous thing in the Allagan ruins as bait, which Urianger says that none of them would have done because it was stupid. But a better plan could have been made, one where he didn't use his allies as unknowing pawns. He claims the fate of the world shouldn't be in the hands of one person, then he tries to put it all into his own. If he keeps that up, Urianger is positive that it'll all end badly. After all of that said, the boy finally admits that he had set the whole thing up, and he apologizes. Urianger wants you to forgive him and to keep it secret from Kral. The two are starting to get along, but Kral wouldn't take too kindly to being manipulated. She also doesn't like being left to do work while her assistant goes to talk, and she shows up to tell Urianger that his unscheduled break from helping put the wards up really ticked Y'shtola off. Not wanting to survive fighting the Empire to only get killed by Y'shtola, he runs off to help her while you and Unukalhai head back to the Rising Stones. He apologizes again for lying to you, and he decides to repay you by telling you something that you should already know. He has the Echo, and he'll use it to protect the star from what he knows is the greatest threat out there, technology that's used for harnessing the power of primals. He knows this for a fact because of what happened on another world where the champions used aura sight to contain the power of primals. They used the aura sight to defeat god after god, but they didn't realize that the aura sight was slowly leaking primal energy. With every god they killed, they changed, turning into monsters that fed on ether. Eventually they went to war over the star's remaining life force, and they fought until there was nothing left. Seeing other people so eager to harness primal powers makes Unukalhai reckless in his attempts to stop them because he knows the end result. His master feels the same way, and he sent Unukalhai to make sure that the fate of that other star isn't shared by this one, and if it's going to be saved, you need to deal with the next member of the Triad. After the fight with Regula, Y'shtola sensed unstable ether coming from the section of the prison that held Sophia, the goddess, meaning she's about to wake up, so it's back to Oz's you go. When you get there, Krau comes running up to the two of you, telling you that Y'shtola and Urianger are under attack. You run off to join them thinking you're about to have to fight Garleans again, but the two Scions are fighting a guy who's wearing Dunmer armor from the Elder Scrolls series and thinks you've been recruited by the Allagans. He's not alone. He has two friends with him who claim that he stalled you all for long enough before they teleport away, but not before quoting a strange prophecy. With scales in hand, the goddess shall arise, and righteously cast off her cursed power, that she with wrathful Worm King at her side might judge and thence bring balance unto all. Then the guy says the goddess is awake, and you Allagans are done for before he leaves too. Y'shtola and Urianger have no idea what they were saying. The attackers spoke in an old Mericidian language, but one of the perks of the Echo allows you to understand most languages, so it was all gibberish to anyone but you, Krau, and Unukalhai. The fact that they thought you were Allagans and claimed their goddess is awake means they're probably thralls of the icon that you came to deal with, and they were likely trapped during Mericidia's war with Allag. That's bad because Sephirot was strong when he was barely awake. If Sophia's had time to get back up to full strength, you're gonna get wrecked, so there's no time to waste. The Warrior of Light, Krau, and Unukalhai head off to face the goddess, while Urianger and Y'shtola deal with any of her servants that break free. While you face down the scantily clad, obsidian-skinned goddess, those same three servants of hers show up and force you to deal with them as well. I want to point out that from a lore perspective, these are not fights that the Warrior of Light is doing alone. Krau points out on multiple occasions that you and your Echo-protected friends are fighting the Triad. While the Warrior of Light is stronger than most, the Triad are as close to full-powered primals as you've ever faced, putting them in the realm of power with things like the First Brood. One-on-one, the Warrior of Light would have died, at least at this point in the story. With the fall of Sophia, you head back outside to meet up with the others. All has been taken care of, but Y'shtola still doesn't know how Sophia's servants managed to wake up. Apparently, Krau and Unukalhai saw the remains of a Garlean soldier near the containment facility. Seems like he'd gotten too close to the Icon when the Garleans had stormed the place, and she had tempered him. Even unconscious, the Icon had been able to take control of someone, and used him to free her servants, and if it hadn't been for you, they would have freed her. But it's still a mystery as to why Sophia was able to give her pet the knowledge needed to operate the facility. Unukalhai and Krau have an answer for that too. There was a flaw built into one of the machines that held the goddess, a flaw that had been built in on purpose. When the third astral era was winding down and the Mericidians were nearly wiped out by the Allagans, Sophia had come up with a plan. She had her oracle work with some rebels in Allag, who she had sabotaged the prison they had been building for her. Then the goddess and her thralls let themselves get captured. Her prison was at the heart of Allag, where she had planned for the rebels to release her so she could attack from the center of the city. It was a good plan, but the rebels got caught and executed before they could carry it out. However, the Allagans never discovered the flaw in the prison. Krau wonders if the plan had succeeded, would the Mericidians have won the war instead of the Allagans? And if that prophecy was to be believed, it was likely. Bahamut, the primal version, was a prisoner at the time, and if Sophia had freed him, the battle definitely could have gone differently. Granted, they would have likely destroyed everything else since Bahamut was a savage beast, but the Mericidians probably didn't care since their home was already on the brink of destruction. The moral of the story is, don't try to enslave primals, because once you grab a lion, it's very hard to hold on to, but even harder to safely let go. As you all get ready to head back to the Rising Stones, Unukalhai stays behind and turns off the life support systems so all of Sophia's remaining thralls die. When you all get back, Y'shtola confronts Unukalhai because she had ran a final check on Sophia's prison and realized that all of her thralls were dead. She wants to know if he did it. He admits that he did because the Allagans had a bigger plan for the prisoners. The Triad's prison was a prototype for Dalamud and was meant to be a tool that could be used to start calamities on specific targets. Unukalhai took it upon himself to kill the thralls and destroy the means of resummoning Sophia because he didn't think you'd do it. The fact that he doesn't think that the Scions are fully prepared to kill those who've been tempered to keep the world safe is insulting to Y'shtola when every one of you committed to doing what was necessary to protect Eorzea from the minute you joined the group. He apologizes for the insult, which is good because Y'shtola looked like she was on the verge of spanking him. With that settled, she had something else on her mind. It was unlikely that the Garlean Sophia had tempered had wandered off from Regula on accident. People claim that the 6th Legion is full of agents who want to sabotage anything Regula tries to do. The man earned his title through skill and hard work, and he's extremely loyal to the Emperor for praising him for it. A lot of the other higher-ranking Imperials got their position by birthright, and they don't think the man belongs among their ranks. That actually makes the 6th Legion even more dangerous, because in sabotaging Regula, they could cause the last member of the Triad, Zurvan, to be released, which means it's time for you to deal with the icon known as the Demon. Unukalhai wasn't able to learn all that much about Zurvan, the final member of the Warring Triad. The icon was worshipped by a group of Mericidian beastmen, and they are the key to keeping the icon in the physical realm. Unukalhai is positive that there are a lot of his thralls locked up in the research facility, so you all need to find them fast before you have a repeat of the incident with Sophia's servants. The Scions have already started searching for them, but since there are a lot of places that the Scions can't go without being tempered, you and Unukalhai head to Azisla to join them. You arrive to find the facility swarming with Imperial soldiers. Apparently Regula is back, and once again Urianger's wards have been wiped out with little effort. But it wasn't Unukalhai who did it this time. Regula Van Hydrus didn't either. The Garlean shows up personally to tell you that the Icon's own powers removed the wards. He didn't come there to fight you. He wanted to let you know that Zurvan's followers are awake, and they're trying to free their master. They had been asleep when you fought Sophia, but since the Triad were all allied against the Allagans, it's not hard to believe that when Sophia set her thrall to free herself, she made him work on Zurvan's restraints too. Regula doesn't care who opened the doors. His soldiers are in the facility at that very moment, risking being tempered to keep Zurvan from waking. That's why he came to you. His men aren't immune to tempering, but you are, so he wants to work with you to stop the Icon. Seeing as how the Allagan tech failed to contain the power of the Icons, Regula doesn't want it anymore, but he still doesn't want an Icon running free, and he's willing to ask for help from an enemy to stop it. Y'shtola's not exactly keen on the idea of working with the people who killed so many of her people, Ysel included, but Regula isn't asking for forgiveness, and he's not sorry. He fought for his beliefs, and you fought for yours, and he's lost friends to you just like you have to him, and yet he's willing to ask the Empire's most hated enemy to help him deal with a bigger threat. The Scions are still skeptical, but since the Garlean asked you, the decision is yours. When the Warrior of Light agrees to work with Regula, the Scions and Unukalhai agree to help too, so a very unexpected alliance is made, and you all head into the containment area. The ether coming from his servants is being poured into Zurvan from some of the machines around the area that need to be destroyed if you want to keep the Icon asleep, but even in his half-awakened state, he started tempering some of Regula's soldiers. Since the three of you are the only ones immune, the Warrior of Light, Kral, and Unukalhai charge into the area to destroy the generators. And even though he's at risk of being tempered, Regula comes too. Urianger and Y'shtola were going to come as well, but Regula tells them to see if they can save some of his injured men instead. Unukalhai isn't sure if he'll be strong enough, but Regula tells him that the last place you question yourself is on the battlefield. He was born with a gift, and he should use it to the best of his abilities. The time for talking is over, and you all charge in. 3 of the generators are taken down, but Unukalhai isn't able to get to his. Regula saves his life and destroys the last generator, but Zurvan wakes up and attacks him. The Garlean is able to hold off the attack for a moment, but his sword breaks, and the Icon cuts a chunk out of him before going back to sleep. Unukalhai can't understand why the man saved him, but Regula tells him that the gift he has is too precious to let get snuffed out so soon. Besides, the Emperor may need it one day in his war with the Icons. And Regula is more than happy to give his life for the Emperor's benefit after how the man supported him. After telling you one last time to make sure that you finish off Zurvan, Regula dies, and the Scions withdraw to prepare to fight the Icon. I really wish they had looted Regula's armor because out of all of the different sets of Garlean armors, his was my favorite. Seeing Regulus' dedication to the safety of his men and his emperor makes Kryle wonder if it may be possible to convince Varys that trying to control icons is a bad idea, but that's something to worry about later. Unukalhai is more bothered by the fact that his weakness got the man killed, but regret can come later. Zurvan went back to sleep, but the remaining Garleans say that there's an army of his thralls loose in the facility that will keep trying to wake him, which means they need to be dealt with while you take down Zurvan. The last of the Triad is a force to be reckoned with, but the Warrior of Light is able to put an end to the icon once and for all. With Y'shtola and the others having finished off all of his thralls, the threat of the Warring Triad is over. The 6th Legion has to get a little bit of credit for this victory, because without them the icon would have woken up much earlier and been a lot stronger. The remnants of the Legion are heading back to Garlemald to tell the Emperor that his childhood friend is dead. Y'shtola never expected to hear stories of friendship amongst the Garleans, which shows that she views them in the same way that they view the Eorzeans, as savages, and they're both right for a multitude of different reasons. Unukalhai feels pretty inferior after seeing how all of you acted during this endeavor, and he doesn't feel like he has what it takes to ever compare himself to someone like you. Kryle can't even understand why he cares that much, but he decides that it's time to tell you all the whole story, so you head back to the Rising Stones. Unukalhai was born on a different shard, and he didn't have the power to save it because, unlike you, he had never become a warrior of light. He was still a kid, and he believes that if he'd been older and stronger, then he would have been able to stop his world from becoming the Void. It was his world where the heroes had used Auracite to deal with the primals until they were corrupted, turned into ether-consuming fiends, and ravaged the world. They fought each other in a war that drained the world's ether until a flood of darkness consumed everything. The Void Scent that you've seen time and time again are the mutated remains of what used to be his people. When Unukalhai was dying from the injuries of his final battle, Elidibus took his soul into the rift, and from that day on, the Ascian had been his master. He taught him about the different shards, and the war between light and dark for balance, where if either side overcomes the other, it will destroy the world. And most importantly, he told him that the source is the most important of the worlds, one that is very close to being destroyed, which is all very true. Because of this, Unukalhai chose to be Elidibus' tool on the source in hopes of keeping your world from ending up like his own. But even now, he's still too weak to do anything. Urianger thinks the boy is too focused on trying to figure out what it means to be a hero, and he still doesn't understand that heroes aren't born, they're made through their deeds and actions. It doesn't take matching viewpoints or strong arms, it just takes the drive and desire to act on your own behalf and the behalf of your companions. That's something he understands even less, since he's never had any friends. He always had to fight alone. But those days are over, and to prove it, Y'shtola officially welcomes Unukalhai to the Signs of the Seventh Dawn. Soroban, one of the Kojin, also known as the Ninja Turtles, is on a quest that he needs your help for. For once, that's not an excuse for someone to get the Warrior of Light to do some mundane job that anyone could do. Soroban received an anonymous letter asking for the help of the warrior who took down Susanoo. The Ruby Sea is in danger, but before the mysterious contact will tell you what the danger is, he, or she, wants to test you to see if your victory over Susanoo was a fluke. To test your power, they want you to go to Hell's Lid and deal with the Oni that live in the deepest parts of that place. If you complete the task, the writer of the letter will tell you everything. You can't just walk into Hell's Lid, however, but the client sent a magic and very valuable dagger with instructions on how to get into the secret passages. The fact that the client so casually sent such a valuable artifact without even knowing whether or not you would agree to come shows that they're very, very rich. If you agree to go, which we all know that you will, Soroban will open the path for you, but since there is a chance to make some money on this little venture, he decides to go and grab Tataru first. Money will make Tataru go anywhere, especially since Alphinaud keeps spending it on stuff. No scheme is too dangerous for her. Hell's Lid is supposedly a place where the hero Tenzin had defeated a lot of Oni. The Oni were evil creatures that made the lives of the people of the Ruby Sea very difficult. A lot of the creatures lived on the island until Tenzin and the Four Lords drove them away. The people made him filthy rich after that, and he used his money to journey into the mountains, to live away from people until the end of his life. All of that is just a story as far as Soroban knows, so he has no idea what's waiting for you in Hell's Lid. Since he can't tell you exactly how dangerous it is, Tataru makes the wise decision to hide behind a rock while you do what you do best. Soroban makes it known that he won't be coming with you either, so you head into the place alone. I want people to understand that lava is hot. well over 1,000 degrees. So while you see people in movies and video games running around near the glowy liquid fire, in real life, you'd burn to death being even remotely this close. However, the heat doesn't seem to bother the Warrior of Light all that much as he fights his way past fire elementals and actual flame demons. As he heads deeper into Hell's Lid, the landscape changes and an animal transforms into a giant flying snake and tries to kill you before you reach an underground temple. There you get attacked by a really old, very large, magic-wielding turtle. Old or not, the turtle was no pushover, but when you beat him, he turns into a much smaller sea turtle. Now that the dangers seem to be dealt with, Tataru and Zurvan show up and flip the tiny turtle right side up. A small group of other animals show up, and Genbu, the now tiny sea turtle, praises your performance. I guess Zurvan has never looked in a mirror because he freaks out at the sight of a talking turtle, which has Tataru and the Warrior of Light giving him a very confused side-eye. Genbu ignores Zurvan's stupid outburst and apologizes for inviting you to the temple then attacking you, but it is a tradition in the Far East to test people's strength. Now imagine how interesting the world would be if every time you visited a friend's house, you had to slap on some boxing gloves and go a round or two before you even said hi. It would definitely make life more interesting, and trips to Walmart might actually be fun. With the testing out of the way, Genbu introduces himself as the guardian of the temple and the leader of this little group. And he's one of the 4 lords from the legend. And he's not the only one of the animals who can talk, which is normal to Genbu since all of them are over 1,000 years old. Any animal that manages to live for 1,000 years becomes a god of sorts called an auspice, and the Reason Temple is a place where they can gather. Anything that's lived for so long has got to know some interesting things, and Genbu wants you to talk to them before he tells you why he wanted you to come there. The auspices are talkative. They let you know that there are more of them scattered all over the place, and some of them think they are powerful enough to kill you if you get on their nerves. After living for 100 years, the animals will get the ability to think. If they live for 1,000, they will be able to talk, use magic and everything. And as more time passes, the stronger they'll get. Now that you've met everyone, Genbu dives into why you're there. Each auspice has unique abilities. His ability is clairvoyance. That gift gave him a vision of all of Hingashi on fire, and the future he saw isn't that far away, and if it's going to be stopped, he'll need the help of a strong warrior. That's where you come in, but for you to be able to help, you need to understand the way auspices work. The auspice's soul has 2 states, the outer Matama, which is their animalistic rage, and the Niji Matama, which is a state of calm. Those 2 states have to remain in balance for the auspice to be who it is. But since they live for so long, it's possible for traumatic events to disrupt that balance and cause their souls to split. If an auspice is taken over by the automatama, they become feral, which is extremely dangerous because they don't lose any of their power in their process. That power is enough to cause major damage wherever they are. Floods, wildfires, erupting volcanoes, and all around death and destruction. That doesn't mean the auspices are bad. Some of the ones who wreaked a lot of havoc in the past actually find pleasure in helping people, which was noted in the story about Tenzin and the 4 lords that Genbu confirms is actually true, to a certain extent. It wasn't an Oni that they fought, but another auspice. The one they fought was Koryu. He had been consumed by the automatama, and had used his power to cause the flames inside of the island to go haywire. It was going to erupt and destroy the nearby countryside if Tenzin and the 4 lords hadn't fought and sealed Koryu away, in the very temple that you're standing in. Unfortunately, the binding wards are weakening, and if Koryu breaks free, he will finish what he started, which would destroy the island and quite possibly all of Hingashi. Naturally, Tataru assumes Genbu wants you to fight Koryu when he wakes up, but as strong as the Warrior of Light is, alone the auspice would kill him. You'll need the help of the 4 lords. Sadly, Genbu isn't as young or as powerful as he used to be, and to make a bad situation worse, his 3 comrades have nearly fallen to the automatama. They're holding it off, but while they're struggling against their inner darkness, they can't use their powers to strengthen Koryu's prison. Now that you understand how bad things are, Genbu lets you know what he needs you for. He wants the Warrior of Light and some of his adventurer allies to fight the other 3 lords to help them regain control of their primal nature. Fighting gods is just another Tuesday for the Warrior of Light, so of course he's up for it. Genbu had figured that he would be, so he had already told Byakko that you were there, so the auspice is on his way. The White Tiger is a lot bigger than the other auspices that you've seen, and he's more powerful, but Genbu lets him know that you beat Susanoo, so when the 2 of you fight, he doesn't have to hold back. Byakko didn't need the turtle to tell him that you were special. he senses the same light from you that he felt from Tenzin, meaning the hero of the legends was a warrior of light as well. Since everyone is ready, Genbu tells Byakko to let the automatama take control, which is not what Tataru expected since it means the tiger will go on a murderous rampage. But the only way for him to get control is to unleash it and have someone force him to calm down. As long as the auspice hasn't been in that state for so long that he forgets himself entirely, he can regain control. Koryu had been fully taken by his other side, so there was no coming back for him. This method of taming the auspice does have one major drawback. If you fail to subdue him, Byakko won't even be able to regain the small amount of control he has now. He'll become another savage auspice just like Koryu, and that will be the end, so no pressure. Not wanting to destroy the temple during your fight, and because Byakko wants to see the land where he was born just in case this is his last day as himself, the two of you leave the temple to prepare for battle, while Genbu gives Zurvan a task, and he has one for Tataru, who he calls an excitable little urchin as well. With all of the preparations made, the Warrior of Light gets ready to square off with Byakko. The auspice lets his automatama take over, and his new form looks incredible. Not only does it look cool, but he literally makes a tornado that tosses you and your fellow adventurers so high into the sky that you fall for what feels like forever before you finally hit the ground. We're just gonna ignore the fact that falling from that height and slamming into the ground like that would kill absolutely anyone, but the Warrior of Light just shrugs it off and gets right back into the fight. Since you managed to survive falling for a few miles, it's not surprising to anyone when you overpower Byakko. Now that he's back in control, the White Tiger praises your strength and comments on how you're very much like Tenzin. He had met the man long before the kingdom of Doma had ever been created. Back then, because of his fur, Byakko had been marked as a harbinger of doom, so no one, neither human nor animal, wanted to be around him. Instead of sticking around where he wasn't wanted, Byakko had went alone into the mountains to wait for death. But instead of dying, he grew stronger and more unique as time passed, and even fewer creatures would dare to enter his domain. It was a lonely existence until one day he woke and there was a man just standing there. Byakko roared at him and threatened to kill him, but instead of leaving, the man introduced himself as Tenzin. He had always had the ability to talk to animals, which made his people label him a harbinger of doom and kick him out. Seems like people throw that label onto everything they don't understand. But with both of them being outcasts, Byakko and Tenzin became friends. They went on journeys together and ran into others like themselves that caused their group of friends to grow, which sounds a lot like the Scions of the Seventh Dawn. Byakko could talk to you about his adventures all day long, but there are other things to do, so you head back to the Ryusen Temple. Genbu is just as appreciative as you would have expected him to be since you helped his friend, but that doesn't explain what Tataru and Zurvan are doing. The Kojin have some very powerful incantations, like the one that permanently gave the Warrior of Light Alice and Lise the ability to breathe underwater. So Genbu has made Zurvan do some training so he can help strengthen the wards on Koryu's prison. So far the Ninja Turtle is showing some real potential, and Tataru is very good at keeping the Kojin on task. I still think the tiny secretary is going to end up being a boss one day in this game. Just imagine Tataru turning into a primal that instead of taking your health, steals all of your gil. That actually sounds like something that would make for a cool gold saucer event. Of course they use your return as a good time to take a break from their training, so Tataru can ask about Tenzin. She wants to know more about who he was since Genbu already said that most of the stories about the man were totally wrong. For starters, like you, Tenzin had the Echo. Because of the strange abilities he had, the people didn't really trust him, but that never stopped him from helping people, which is how he ended up dead. When Tenzin and the Four Lords had fought Koryu, the auspices had barely come into their powers, so they couldn't help nearly as much as they wanted to in the fight. So Tenzin was forced to use the last of his strength to seal Koryu away, before giving Genbu and the others a crystal that Byakko thinks may have been responsible for their powers growing the way that they did. The Four Lords built the Ryusen Temple as a means of strengthening Koryu's prison and protecting the Ruby Sea like Tenzin would have wanted. They plan on continuing to protect the Ruby Sea for their friend, but they need you to help tame the Aramatama of the other lords. Once you've gotten some rest, of course. Tataru has some things she needs to check on in Kugane anyway, so she heads off. Zurvan tries to sneak away, but Genbu is not letting him leave until his training is complete, so the Kojin wants you to stop by Tamamizu just to let everyone know why he won't be back for a while. Bunshin is happy to hear that Zurvan is getting the opportunity to study with Genbu, and since the old auspice sent a letter giving permission to come and go to the temple whenever,
Bunchen thinks that he might swing by to check on Zurvan when he has time. After the Warrior of Light gets a little bit of sleep, he gets a call from Tataru saying she's going to the temple to give Zurvan a snack, and she thinks you should come too. So of course you go, because no one should ignore a request from Tataru. When the two of you arrive, Zurvan is still being put through Genbu's training, but he hasn't progressed as much as Genbu had hoped, so he thinks more drastic measures are needed. While Zurvan has potential, he's still not a god, which means he may not be ready when the time comes to deal with Koryu. Not to mention the fact that both Seiryu and Suzaku will need their automatoma tamed just like Byakko. So Genbu has a plan for jump-starting Zurvan's powers. There's a box called the Tamate Bako that contains the power of time. Once Zurvan opens the box, the magic in it will age him 1,000 years and let him become an auspice until the magic wears off. There were similar boxes in the Shisui of the Violet Tides, but they only changed your appearance. The Tamate Bako actually ages you since the box was made by an auspice. This particular auspice had lived long enough to see some of his friends get consumed by the automatoma, forcing him to kill them. He knew that he would eventually share the same fate, so he created the Tamate Bako and used it to age himself into oblivion. That way he could die with his own mind. Once the others learned that the box could kill an auspice, they locked it away in the Swallow's compass until they needed it. But the place has been left untended by anyone other than its guardians, so only a strong warrior has a chance of making it through and retrieving the box. That of course means you, and while you're gone, Genbu plans on pushing Zurvan even harder. The auspice you fought in Hell's Lid shows you to the compass and takes the wards down so you'll be able to enter the place, but he does warn you not to open the box once you get it. Before you charge in, he does tell you that the person guarding the box is pretty strong, but since you beat Byakko, you should be okay. The place is protected by everything from magical wards to giant living statues that seem to be a defense that every single fortress in Doma enjoyed using. Elementals of all kinds try to kill you, but none of that compares to the final guardian of the magic box. A monkey auspice flies in on Goku's magic cloud and proceeds to try to beat you to death with a magical shape-changing staff. Kitan Dashang is a formidable fighter just like the other auspices, but after you overcome his strongest techniques, he lets you take the box. With it in tow, you head back to Genbu to see if the magic will be enough to make Zurvan into an auspice. It does, but it doesn't work out the way that you think. And after Tataru gets a face full of the magic dust and turns into an old prune for all of 30 seconds, you have to face off against a very out of control auspice Zurvan, who seems very eager to kill you all. Since Zurvan is out of control and there's no telling how long he'll stay that way, Genbu decides to join in on the fighting to help calm him down. For some reason, Tataru tries to help out too, and as soon as the fighting starts, her carbuncle runs away, so it's up to the Warrior of Light and Genbu to calm the out-of-control turtle down. The fact that the power that was hidden in Zurvan was so great is nothing short of impressive, and after he finally turns back to normal, he doesn't even remember what he'd done, or why you all look so tired. Even though things didn't turn out exactly how he had expected, Genbu does feel like this little training session was a success, since it showed that even though Zurvan is weaker than Byakko and even Genbu, given time and training, he could easily become their equals. They all started off pretty weak in the beginning anyway. Genbu had barely even become an auspice when he first met Tenzin. He had seen a vision of a terrible calamity where a lot of people would die, but since he was a tiny turtle, there wasn't all that much he could do to stop it. Genbu had seen the future multiple times and had never had the power to do anything about it. But after living for over 500 years, he had saw a vision of a landslide that was going to destroy a village that wasn't far away. He decided that it was time for him to do something, so Genbu tried to warn the people. Unfortunately, he didn't speak the language of humans, so he couldn't communicate with them at all. Since there was nothing he could do, he decided to leave the village, knowing that he'd have to watch another bad prediction come true. When he was leaving, Tenzin saw him and was actually able to understand him. He was traveling with Byakko and the two of them started fighting in the middle of the village to make the people run off. The village got destroyed not long after that, but the people survived. It was the first time Genbu had managed to save anyone with his visions. After that, he joined Tenzin and Byakko, and they traveled around the world helping people. Thinking back on all of the dangers they had faced together makes Genbu really wish that Tenzin was there. But the Warrior of Light isn't a pushover, so having him there does make things a little better. Break time's over, so Genbu's ready to get back to training Zurvan while Tataru heads back to Kugane.
The Warrior of Light heads back to the Kojin city to let the Elder know what Soroban is up to. It doesn't take long for Genbu to send a letter telling you that you need to get back to the temple, so the Warrior of Light and Tataru both head back over there to see what's changed in your absence. From what Genbu says, Soroban's gotten a lot stronger since you left, but Genbu has him doing some special training at the moment that he says is better done in private, so you can't see him. That's not why he called you anyway. The wards on Koryu's prison have gotten even weaker, which means the four lords need to finish getting ready for the inevitable battle. So Genbu needs you to tame the feral side of another of his friends. The one he's talking about is Suzaku, the Firebird. She shows up at the temple for the first time in a few hundred years, and she's not all that happy that Genbu called her there. She didn't know that Koryu was on the verge of breaking free, but now that she does, she assumes that means that the Warrior of Light is supposed to tame her feral side. Genbu tells her that you're the heir of Tenzin's legacy, and she gets offended by the fact that he compares someone like you to Tenzin. She's extremely fond of their fallen comrade, and since you are bold enough to say that you're his equal, she plans on killing you very painfully when you fail to measure up. Even Tataru notices that Suzaku seems a lot more angry than Byakko had, but Genbu says it's because her Aramatama feeds off of her grief over the loss of Tenzin, and that makes her more angry, but it's her story to tell. And she'll likely tell you all of it, if she doesn't burn you to death when you fight. The fact that you're brave enough to risk your life to fight her does get Suzaku to have a little more respect for you, but she still doesn't see you as fit to take up Tenzin's mantle. Byakko understands partially how she feels, but Tenzin's dead, and if the four lords aren't brought back to their full power, Koryu will destroy the Ruby Sea, which will ruin Tenzin's legacy. The man died right before their eyes to prevent that from happening, and if Suzaku spends her time mourning the past while abandoning the present, she'll be dishonoring their friend's sacrifice. Byakko's words do the opposite of making Suzaku see reason. She thinks that the Warrior of Light has started corrupting the others just because he has the same sin as Tenzin. She's very nearly been fully overtaken by her Aramatama, so there's not all that much time left before she'll reach the point of no return. So the Warrior of Light heads off to battle what may be the most powerful of the four lords. Suzaku takes on her true form and really tries to kill you. Not like the others hadn't tried hard before, but it's always something about the fire-wielding enemies that really makes it seem like they want you dead. But the Warrior of Light beats her, getting her darker side under control, and after that she's much calmer than she had been. She apologizes for how disrespectful she was, and she thanks you for saving her from a fate far worse than death, as well as for freeing her mind so she could mourn Tenzin in the proper way. She clearly loved the man way more than a friend, and since she does have a human form, we'll just leave their relationship status up to the interpretation of the Twitter folks, who tend to create some somewhat disturbing art. Now that her mind's clear, Suzaku tells the Warrior of Light her story. She was born a very long time ago, and because of how she looked, people mistook her for the legendary bird Phoenix, and since the Phoenix was said to be able to make people immortal, she was hunted constantly. The only person who didn't treat her like a tool was Tenzin. She had joined him, Genbu, Byakko, and Seiryu, and the four lords and the samurai traveled around the realm together. People were afraid of them, but Tenzin still wanted to help people. Eventually, they started to praise them all for their good works. They dealt with any problems that came up, whether they were demons to kill or possessed people to free. There was no job that they wouldn't take, and eventually a king called on them for their help. That was what led them to their fight with the insane auspice Koryu. While their group had taken down quite a few threats, they were still young as auspices go, and they were no match for Koryu. But Tenzin used all of his power to strike out at Koryu and seal him away, but that caused him to take a fatal blow. If Suzaku had actually been the legendary Firebird, she could have saved Tenzin, but at the time she didn't have the powers. She got them later, which was basically a slap in the face. But since she can't use those powers to save Tenzin, she can at least use them to save the people he died to protect. She's made a decision, so the two of you go back to let the others know that this mission was a success. The fact that you aren't dead lets everyone know that things must have turned out okay, and Suzaku's relaxed demeanor makes her much better to be around. Since that part's done, Genbu finally remembers that he needs to check on Soroban since he left him training alone, so he calls him and Soroban comes flying in. Once again he's changed. This time he's turned into a giant tortoise. He probably just said a word wrong in the ritual Genbu had him doing and accidentally gave his body to a turtle god. He doesn't want to stay like that, but Genbu doesn't know how long he'll actually be like that. If he's lucky, he'll turn back by the time you tame Seiryu's dark side. But that will take a while since the Warrior of Light needs some rest. Since Soroban can't leave, he wants you to stop by his home and let the Elder know what's happened to him now. The Warrior of Light agrees and he heads off to relay the message and get a bit of sleep before he goes after the last of the 4 lords. While the Warrior of Light was away, an auspice came to Bunchen looking for him, and he was a little bit on edge, which means things must be getting pretty bad at the temple, so not wasting any time, the Warrior of Light rushes back over there. Apparently Koryu's wards are really close to breaking down, so the 3 lords and Zurvan are working hard to keep them in place, but they won't be able to hold it for long, which means they need you to get Seryu's Aramatama back under control so he can join in with the resealing process. From what Genbu says, Seryu is the strongest member of their group, so fighting him won't be easy, and it seems like you won't have to go looking for him because he shows up at the temple. He knows that the 2 of you need to fight, but it'll probably be a bad idea to do it right there, so the 2 of you head off to get things underway. Genbu decides to come with you, and he leaves Tataru in charge while he's away. When you all make it outside, Seryu can sense the similarities between you and Tenzin, and since Tenzin had beat Seryu in a one-on-one fight, he has a lot of respect for the man. He had wanted to get stronger than him, and he had been training since the day they met, but he never got his rematch since Koryu killed him. Once he had gained real power, there wasn't anyone left to test it against. Then he thought about Koryu. He could fight against him and kill him, and that would let him get both a good fight and revenge for his fallen friend. And he figured out exactly what he needed to do to get the power to win. If he wanted to beat a corrupted auspice, he'd have to become a corrupted auspice, so unlike the others, he stopped resisting his dark side. He knows that means he'll lose himself entirely, but he believes that's the only way to get the power he needs to beat Koryu, and that also means fighting him will be even harder for you. Since Seryu willingly embraced his darker half, that will make him a lot stronger than the others. It really does make him stronger, but it's still not enough to overpower the Warrior of Light. With the battle over and Seryu having tasted his second defeat at the hands of a mortal, he lets you know his story. He had been lucky. He was born on an island where the people worship snakes, and they thought he was a kami. When people call you a god for long enough, you'll start to believe it, which Seryu did, but things actually got put into perspective when he manifested his powers, and the people started treating him differently. When problems popped up, droughts, floods and such, they started to think that it was his doing. They thought they'd made the god upset, so they changed their offerings from normal things like money and food to people, thinking that sacrificing young pure women to the snake god would solve their problems. No matter how you season people meat, it's probably disgusting, so instead of eating the women, Seryu just took them away from the island. And yes, I said people meat is probably nasty, so none of you will assume that I've tasted it before. That's how rumors get started, and I don't really need all that drama in my life. Since things started to get better after their sacrifices, the people kept the practice going, and eventually the kami that they had all loved for generations got labeled as a demon, and the people who had once worshipped him started convincing mercenaries to come and kill the snake. Let's just say that ended badly for all of the ones that showed up. Seryu didn't like killing the people, but he did like living, so they had to go. But all of that changed when Tenzin and the 3 auspices that he had made friends with showed up. He fought Tenzin one-on-one and lost. He had expected the man to kill him afterwards, but instead he offered him a place in his crew. Seryu didn't want charity, but Tenzin told him that he could pay for their company by using his power to help people. That way he could become a god that was actually worthy of being worshipped. After telling the Warrior of Light his story, Seryu realized that what he had remembered before the fight when he was letting his dark side take over was completely different from what he knew the story had meant. His more malicious half was making him remember things in a way that made it seem like letting it have control was the right thing to do. Realizing that makes him grateful to you for clearing his mind. That couldn't have come at a better time, because Genbu headed back to the temple while the 2 of you were fighting because apparently Koryu is really close to breaking free. The 2 of you book it back to the temple, and when you get there, Genbu's happy to see his friend acting normal again, but they don't get time to chat because Koryu's wards are about to break. The 4 lords need to get started on sealing the prison, but Genbu wants the Warrior of Light and Tataru to leave just in case they fail, because if Koryu breaks free, everyone in the temple will die first. Of course, after coming this far, neither of them plan on leaving, and since there's no time to argue about it, the 4 lords get started. At first it looks like they succeed in binding the auspice again, but they don't and Koryu breaks free. His very presence changes the entire landscape and he wastes no time attacking the group. Genbu blocks the attack, but he can't hold it off for long. When it breaks through his shield, it kills the old turtle. With one of their number dead, the lords know that they can't win, but they think they can hold Koryu off until the rest of you escape. We all know that the Warrior of Light never runs away, even when he should, so he jumps in to help them out. As soon as Koryu sees him, he thinks that he's Tenzin. He remembers killing you and he gets ready to do it again, but the real Tenzin appears and shields you all. Everyone's surprised to see him, but no one's going to complain about the extra help, so him and the Warrior of Light combine their powers to help hold Koryu back. But even with the added power, without Genbu they still won't be able to seal the auspice away. Seeing as how there's no other way, Zurvan steps up and performs the ritual that Genbu had taught him. It was the one that he had done wrong when he'd given his body to a turtle god, but this time he knows how to do it right, and he's using it to summon Genbu's soul back. But there's a catch. Genbu's soul will merge with Zurvan's, and Zurvan will lose his body, meaning he's about to give his life to resurrect Genbu. He's well aware of what's going to happen, and in true hero fashion he does it anyway. Genbu is restored, and with the full power of the four lords, the Warrior of Light and Tenzin, they manage to seal Koryu away again. The seals will weaken again over time, but it'll be thousands of years before that's a problem for anyone. It's a good day overall, but the joy everyone feels is still overshadowed by the fact that they lost Zurvan in the process. Genbu doesn't understand why they're all so sad because according to him, Zurvan's not dead, and to prove it he turns back into the younger turtle. Under normal circumstances, Zurvan would have died because the strength of the soul determines who would control the body, and it's always the stronger soul that wins. But with all of his training, Zurvan has actually become stronger than Genbu, which means it'll be Genbu that fades away. But before he does, he'll be sure to teach Zurvan everything that he can about becoming his replacement, if the other lords agree. After seeing how willingly the turtle had risked his life to save them all, he more than earned his spot as the newest member of the four lords. There was one last thing that they were all curious about. They couldn't understand how the real Tenzin had appeared. Their best guess is that he may have placed a part of his own soul in the ward that he had made around Koryu, and when it had broken, it not only released the auspice but that piece of Tenzin's soul too. If that's the truth, then Genbu may be able to teach Zurvan how to do that before he fades away. Since he'll be a part of him for the next 500 years, I'm pretty sure he has enough time to get it done. This concludes the story of the four lords. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe, ding that notification bell, and if you really want to show your support, you can donate to the channel through the link in the description. Until next time guys, later.